There are grim lessons for Britain amid the crisis in Hong Kong, where pro-democracy protesters are pitted against the power of communist China. These lessons explain what the concept of Britain means in the world today. The lessons speak of British decline, of the end of empire, of the psychological scars this loss of power left on the British psyche, and how the internalized humiliation over national decline led to the self-harm of Brexit. These lessons also tell how Britain has squandered its right to wield moral authority in the world, how the country has now rendered itself both so powerless, and so dependent on other greater nations, that the UK is becoming a pipsqueak state. What's happening in Hong Kong matters to every democracy on earth. A tyranny, in the shape of communist China, is bearing down on people striving to live the way we do. Protesters want the simple freedoms the democracy provides. We may think our Western democracies are currently broken, that voters and politicians are incapable of making sensible decisions. But at least we have the right to mess things up for ourselves. Each of us is intrinsically free. An army does not wait on the sidelines for us if we demand too much, or express ourselves too freely. Of course, in the face of brutal police actions, the pro-democracy protesters have carried out acts of violence themselves, wounding their cause. Two wrongs never make a right. But any idea that the scales are equally balanced between protesters and tyranny is absurd. We look back on bloody struggles for freedom like the 1956 Hungarian uprising and see clearly that the protesters were right to defend themselves against Soviet totalitarianism. As Democrats, China's appalling human rights record alone should be enough to convince us that the regime is rotten to the core, and any sane person should resist being under its control. Despite the failings of the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, it's obvious that morally they tower above the squalid oppression of the Chinese state. How could anyone who sees themselves as a decent human being and a Democrat not immediately side with the Hong Kong demonstrators, faults and all? A little empathy goes a long way. Imagine this country felt the hot breath of an authoritarian superpower breathing down the back of its neck. How might our citizens react? Britain has a responsibility to support Hong Kong. The whole history of Hong Kong is down to British empire building. We got our hands on Hong Kong after the First Opium War, which was fought to allow Britain to flood China with drugs. It was one of our acquisitions, made at gunpoint, as we swaggered the world, taking countries as we pleased. Then Hong Kong returned to China under the one country, two systems principle in 1997. A capitalist microstate became tacked onto the side of A. For more on this story, visit the news article link.